This week on Unglossy.
It was the need for conversation. I felt, I really started reaching out to other photographers in COVID because, a lot of us were under lockdown, and I was wanting to kind of connect with the photography community out there.
From the top.
Yeah.
I'm Tom Frank.
I'm Mickey Fax.
And I'm Jeffrey Sledge.
Welcome to Unglossy, decoding brand and culture. I'm Tom Frank, partner and chief creative officer at Merit Creative. This is Mickey Fax, hip-hop artist and founder and CEO of Pendulum Inc. And that is Jeffrey Sledge, a seasoned music industry veteran who has worked with some of the biggest artists in the business. We're here to explore the moments of vulnerability, pivotal decisions, and creative sparks that fuel the relationship between brand and culture. Get ready for a thought-provoking journey into the heart and soul of branding, the unscripted, unfiltered, and truly unglossy truth.
Right.
All right. I want to set the record straight right here and now.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, does Mickey have a sandwich named after him, true or false? And if so, where and what in the world is it?
He definitely does have a sandwich named after him. That is true. We had it. He took me to the spot yesterday. I don't remember the name of the spot. It's off of North. Anybody in the Atlanta area? It's off North Druid Hills, which is it's a shade. I guess it's a shade north of the city, but it's like right there. It sounds like you got to drive 10 miles out or something. It's really right there, across from a Tesla dealership. And the sandwich was banging, actually. It's a chicken sandwich. It has pastrami bacon, which I had never had on it. Onion.
Pastrami
I never had it
bacon.
before. It was really good, though. Onions. I don't know what kind of it wasn't mayonnaise or mustard, but it was like some type of spread on it. And they give you a substantial amount of chicken, so it's not like a little cheap sandwich. It was dope.
And what is it called?
The Big Mick. Pause. The Big Mick.
The Big Mick. And Mickey, this fits within your dietary restrictions?
Yeah, the spot is kosher.
Yes, it's kosher.
The spot is
It's a kosher sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all Jewish cats run the spot and own it. They were real cool. Yeah, it was dope. It was a good day. Mick crushed his sandwich. He ate his shit in like 2 minutes. It took me a minute to finish mine because it was a lot, but it was really good though. It was really, really good.
I'm a little jealous you guys went to lunch without
next time
me.
you come down, we'll take you over there.
We called you.
All
You
right.
didn't pick up.
I called you. All right, guys, we definitely had a good conversation today.
Oh, man.
Great conversation.
Did we? Whew.
Great conversation.
Matt.
Yeah, Matt Jacob. He was dope. Photographer to the stars. No, not to the stars, but he's a great photographer, and he has a very interesting story. And he basically kind of shifted from one successful career to another. From
And even to another, I would say.
Yeah, he's a private.
And you know what I loved about this guy? I love his work, and I simply reached out to him, and he replied. We had never met, and we got to sit down with this guy and have a great conversation about photography, about podcasting,
and piloting,
and piloting.
Flying private jets.
That was the hidden gem.
Yeah, flying private jets around the world too. Yeah, it was dope. He was dope. I liked him a lot.
Yeah. And two interesting things that came out of that. One, I have a similar love-hate relationship with social media. He might be a little further on the hate side.
Right.
Yeah. And number two, the whole podcasting experience. It was nice to relate to somebody else who's doing it for very similar reasons
and
that we do.
Figuring it out.
Yeah. And figuring it out.
I think people are gonna really love this episode.
Yeah.
I really do.
Here's the lingering issue that comes out of this for me. Can the world ever just go back to watching all video at 16:9 horizontal? Can we force this to happen one day?
I don't think so. Not on phones.
Why can't phones change one day?
Why would they?
So to Jeffrey's point, I would say yes.
You think so?
You say we can go back.
Yes. with this
Ah,
glasses.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, you might be right because I really didn't think about the glasses, which are coming for sure. Pause, which are definitely on the way. So yeah, I didn't think about
Yeah,
that. Yeah, yes, yeah, yeah,
that's the only
yeah,
way. That's the only
yeah.
way. Because then it'll kind of feel like 3D,
Mm-hmm.
where you could kind of look
Mm-hmm.
and see what's going
Yeah,
on. If you got your Oculus, it'll be more
yeah,
panoramic. But if you're just kind of walking around, your glasses can be that
yeah,
horizontal view.
yeah. They kind of
Yes.
have to be in glasses.
And I saw this guy. He said that in 10 years we will not have phones.
Everything will be through the glasses.
So there's hope. There's hope, is what
Everything
you're
will go through
saying.
the glasses in 10 years.
Everything is going to go to the glasses in about 10 years.
Wow.
And this is the same guy that said we would have phones in our hands soon.
So he knows.
He said this like 20 years ago. So he knows that we will be wearing glasses. Everybody's going to have glasses. And
When are we getting that guy on the podcast?
man, that guy, I forgot who he works with. I think he works with Google or something. I would love to get him here. I'll have so many
Yeah.
questions.
Mickey, go get him.
Because
Go get him.
you could take pictures just by blinking.
Oh wow.
I know that Apple, I know we're getting off topic, but I know Apple has this new technology with the phone where you can just look at the phone and kind of use your eyes as the mouse.
Wow.
Yeah.
All I got out of that was we have hope. There's hope for us all.
There's hope.
There is hope. And a guy that has some hope in him is our guest
Matt
today.
Jacob.
Let's dive in with photographer, with podcaster, and pilot, Mr. Matt Jacob.
Matt Jacob.
Unglossy is brought to you by Merit Creative. Looking to skyrocket your business's visibility and drive growth? At Merit Creative, we solve your brand and marketing woes. With big ideas, decades of experience, and innovative solutions, we'll draw in your target audience and keep them hooked. Remember, creativity is key to success. Partner with Merit Creative and unlock your brand's potential. Learn more at meritcreative.com. And now, back to the show. All right, fellas, let me introduce you to a guy who I just kind of stumbled upon via Instagram, right? I started following his account. I absolutely love the feel of his content. It's inspirational. It's educational. It made me curious to know more about the people and the stories behind every post. He's a cultural portrait photographer and host of the Mood podcast. We might be able to get some tips here, guys. The Mood podcast is all about the art of conversation, one frame at a time. Say hello to Matt Jacob.
What's up, Matt?
Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks
So-
for being here.
Where in the world are you? You seem like you're a guy who's well traveled. Where do you sit right now as we talk to you?
I sit in my mum's house, which my mum's been kind of ill for the last 6 months, so I'm visiting her for the week. But I'm based out of Bali, Indonesia. Been in Southeast Asia for like the last 12, 13 years. But yeah, travel a lot. My background as a pilot and as a travel photographer kind of takes me to, all over the place. So at this time, I'm in the unglamorous south side of London, essentially.
Unglamorous. I don't know about that. So I want you to introduce yourself. Did I do you justice? I don't think I captured everything that you are.
I think you flattered me completely. I don't, when you ask people, because I've, obviously sit where you guys are sat as well. When you ask people to introduce themselves, it's often, where do you start? It's like, I'm a flawed human trying to make my way through life and all the stumbling blocks it presents. But, I'm multifaceted and master of nothing really. I'm kind of jack of all trades. I love photography. I do photography pretty much every day. It's my number one passion. It's a selfish endeavor, really. I just love, making images. I love making art. I love trying to improve all the time. But my background, my adult background is as a pilot. I it's kind of the vehicle that got me into photography was flying around the world. Completely privileged position and lucky enough to get paid to do something I loved. And visited so many places. I wanted to kind of document them. And being a guy that was into gadgets and technology, I picked up a camera and kind of fell in love with it straight away. And then learned over the years to obviously hone that craft a little bit more and continue to learn and continue to evolve. So, and then the podcast thing kind of came up, for the last few years, which is kind of my new love. I love sitting across from folks like yourself and, shooting the shit and just talking a lot of cool stuff and meeting some amazing people. And I always come away from that learning something. Every episode I learn something. So kind of another selfish venture as well, but
selfish but true and fun, right? I mean, this is fun stuff. We get to talk to you. I mean, this is cool. Okay, so I got to ask you this: you're a pilot, which became a photographer. Did you ever combine the two? Do you do shoots hanging out of a plane? And I asked this for a very, very specific reason.
Okay.
Well, I have been asked to do that. So like my pilot world is in the private jet world. So I fly for a specific individual, and he, obviously a rich dude. So, we see some rich people coming on the jet, and, I've had a few people ask me sometimes, let's do a photo shoot in the jet. It's not really my thing. I'd rather be part of it than the guy behind the camera.
Yo, hold on. Before we move on to the photography thing,
I was going to tell a story, Jeffrey.
No.
All right.
I want to hear a story from my man Matt, sexy Matt. What's the wildest thing you've seen on the private jet?
There we go.
No names.
The
wildest thing you've seen on the jet, and I guess combined with who, again, no names, the richest person you've ever flown.
Without giving the name.
Yeah, no names.
Yeah, that's difficult.
So he can talk freely because nobody knows who he's talking about.
Okay.
Well, the richest person I've flown you would know him. Put it that way. Anyone on the street would know him. He's top 10 richest people in the world in terms of worth.
Was he cool?
And that's kind of you forget they're just men, or they're just women, or they're just people. They're just humans. It's like meeting one of your biggest stars in whatever sport or whatever music sector you're in. It is a little bit kind of starstruck, but they're just people, and they just want to get on with their day. They treat private jets like we treat Ubers, right? So they just want to get on and go. So we've flown some rich people. In terms of antics, in terms of it doesn't happen as often as you guys would like. Put it that way. But I've seen a couple of soft orgies. I've seen
soft orgies is crazy.
Yeah,
that took a twist.
Yeah,
and those kind of things always involve alcohol and drugs, right? So we don't allow, in most private jets, even though they're private, you're not allowed to smoke on board, because it's just a safety thing, right? No one wants to die, but everything else kind of goes. So people who've flown quite a lot of private jets know that, so they know they're not going to be able to smoke weed, or they probably can, but it's probably not a good idea, or smoke any other type of drug. So they'll find other ways to do it,
other ways to indulge.
Yeah, and especially in the US, I don't want to. The US is such a great place to fly because it's so free, and if you have a private jet, you don't have to go through security. You don't have to go through. You literally come out of your car straight onto the jet. There's just nothing. So you bring whatever you want, especially if you're flying domestic. So yeah, some trips I've had before, like East Coast to West Coast, and people go crazy. People have fun.
That's a little scary to me at the same time, that we allow anybody to put anything on a plane here in the U.S.
Yep.
That's interesting.
I remember a music manager who I will remain nameless. He had a massive artist, and he told me they were doing shows. They did a lot of shows in Russia. So these oligarchs or whatever would fly him over, private. And he said they'd pay him in cash. So they'd have like duffel bags of money. And so they fly over, they do the show, they get the duffel bags and just put the duffel bags on the plane. They wouldn't check in, no money claims, so no taxes and da-da-da. And they were kind of doing that, flying back and forth, just bringing cash in and out of the country. Crazy.
I have a feeling it might have been more than cash.
We could. I mean, not. Well,
Yeah.
maybe. You know, you got any stories like that, Matt? Before you move on.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm not gonna. I'm not
Okay.
gonna go any.
All right.
Wow.
Look, if you have a private jet and it's registered privately, like we have cars, you know, you pay your fees, but you can pretty much do whatever you want on that jet. Like you can just do whatever you want. Now above that, you start if you're going to rent a private jet. So if you don't own a private jet and you rent one, then it's a little bit trickier because you're under different laws and legislation. But if you are rich enough to own your own private jet and you fly it like in the US under private rules, fucking do whatever you want.
Wow.
It's so loose. Yeah, it's scarily loose actually.
All right, Jeffrey, can I tell my story?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want Matt to relate to this.
We just want to let Matt know this isn't a regular, photography podcast. We're going to talk.
It's not a regular photography podcast, but here's how I'm going to get us there. All right, I got a photography story and an air travel story that combine, right? So I got hired one time. I'm not a photographer like you, Matt, but I try to play one on TV. So I got hired as a photographer and videographer to shoot a building in Times Square that you guys both know, the M&M building. I'm sure you've been there.
Yep.
So we rented a helicopter and we got all the rights approved to basically leave out of Brooklyn and take the helicopter right down to Times Square and record everything. What I didn't realize was, I guess I should have thought of this. They removed all the doors from the helicopter. Then when I get in there, they're giving me a harness. I'm like, what's this harness for? They harness me up. Then they harness my camera up. And they say, we assume you'll be standing out on the little helicopter thing. And so I'm on one side, the videographer's on the other side, and we are hanging out of this helicopter in Times Square right at dusk. So it's like that perfect time where the lights are starting to go up. There was one point where I felt like I could have reached out and, the big H&M building. I know you guys know that building. I felt like I could have just tapped it. That's how crazy. And this helicopter guy was insane. Like he could get right down in there so that we got the most perfect shots. But one of the most amazing experiences ever to see New York by helicopter, literally hanging out of the side of a helicopter.
And not many people get to do that.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
That's
where do we see the photos? Let's go and judge the photos.
I'm going to say Now I'm going to be honest with you. I was a little shaky up there because I got a little nervous. My hand kept going back and forth between holding both on the camera and then also like holding one on the side.
Yeah, and wiping your ass because you're scared.
Good point. All right, so I got to ask you this: where did the love of photography then come from? You're traveling all over the place. You're seeing some amazing things. Most people just can't pick up a camera and fall in love with it, can they?
Yeah, absolutely they can. I mean, whether they fall in love with it or not is like anything. Whether we fall in love with anything we do, right? But anyone can pick up a camera. Anyone can learn to be a photographer. So that's kind of the beauty of it. But it's also a bit of a curse right now because of social media and everyone is a photographer because everyone's got an iPhone that's got a pretty good camera on it and can take some pretty cool photos. So which is great. Like the more people have access to a camera, whether it's an iPhone or any other type of camera, the better in my opinion. But I don't know. I can't really explain it. I think my initial interest came from the technology. Being a pilot, I love to push buttons. I love switches and just like gadgets and boys with their toys. And that's kind of like where kind of the digital cameras came in. It's like, this is something I can just push buttons with and play around with all day. But actually, once I started to kind of play around with it more and realize that I can make some pretty cool stuff from this, that's when my interest in the artistic side of it kind of grew, evolved. And then I got into the community and started learning like with professionals and really understanding, okay, man, I'm really bad at this, and I've got to there is a level between beginner and advanced that is big, right? It just like anything that's ubiquitous to people and that you can just pick up. It's like football. Anyone can go and play football, but whether you can be a really great footballer is only the top 1% can maybe do that. So that's always a pursuit. And that's, I guess, the real enjoyment of it, is that process, trying to just get better and better all the time. So I think that is now my interest, and that's now my curiosity with photography. How can I be a better artist? But initially it was kind of flipped. It was more look at this cool thing, and I can buy the next camera, and buy a new lens, and there's endless things you can buy equipment wise as a photographer, which was, I think, as a young man, was my initial kind of interest in it.
What is your crown jewel photo that you've taken, in your opinion?
I was asked this the other day, actually. I don't have one, but my audience does. Like, there's a photo that I named "Girl in Green," and it was one of my earlier kind of, I guess, more respected photos, probably about 6 or 7 years ago now. And I was in Uganda on a holiday, just traveling. You just put a bag on my back and a camera, went traveling. And this is when I was still really felt like I was learning photography. And this 6-year-old Ugandan girl just took my fancy. She was absolutely gorgeous, really cute, and didn't speak any English, but there was definitely a connection. And this was amongst 50 young Ugandans in a very rural village. And of course, I'm the only white Western guy for probably 1,000 miles, let alone a few hundred miles. So I was kind of like famous. I was getting all the attention, and it was such a beautiful experience. And so I started taking photos of people as they trusted me a little bit more, and they enjoyed the experience because it was new to them. They'd never seen a camera before, and I was showing them the photos, and it's just all a lovely, sad but lovely experience. And there was this one girl that just she just came through the lens like I'd never seen anything before. And she was holding a green big kind of fig leaf that she was playing around in the yard with her friends, and she was wearing a ripped green dress that was kind of the only thing she owned or her family owned for her, completely shredded. And I get emotional thinking about it now, because she was so sweet and they're so happy. And I took that photo after a day of kind of spending with them, and I loved it. It was nice. I loved it so much I got it tattooed on my arm.
Oh wow!
But it was the one photo that kind of that had some success in terms of an audience feedback, right? So there was the first time I felt like, are people enjoying my photography? So that photo always resonates with me, and always, it's definitely not my best photo ever, for sure, but it means a lot. And definitely my audience, they always come back to it whenever I post it or share it or print it. There's always a lot of love for it, because there's a story with it as well. I mean, it looks beautiful. She's amazing, and there's a nice story behind it, a sad but sweet one.
Is there somewhere that you in the world that you've shot that's like, this is the perfect place to shoot? Like, I don't know, a country or a Pacific region of a country where it's like, everything I shoot here is perfect? Is it, I know you live in the Far East now. Is it there? Is it Africa? Where is it that kind of you go and like, okay, this is the perfect place to shoot, or not? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think of quite a few African countries, because the texture and the people in many African countries, certainly sub-Saharan countries that I've been to, are just incredible. And they love the experience of photography. They love the experience of meeting foreigners, and they're so welcoming. And it's just it just makes being a portrait photographer quite easy. And then you have, generally like good weather and good landscapes and just general beauty that you can photograph. But the other country that comes to mind is India. Now, India, again, like, photography is about light, generally about light. And in India, you're pretty much guaranteed most days really, really soft, like hazy light and clear weather. So you're getting these incredible sunrises, incredible sunsets, and you have time to just, enjoy those moments. And you don't have to worry. Most places you go to, you have to worry about the weather. If you're shooting outside, you've got to think about the weather and, perfect times of day to get the good light, and then you've got clouds and rain and what doesn't forecast, and then you're having to, it's just an extra stressor that you have to deal with. In India, you rarely have that difficulty, so you can like forget about the weather because you're guaranteed to have like good light for the morning and evening. So yeah, I'd say India is kind of the front runner in that respect.
Okay.
When did this passion for photography become a career?
I mean, I'm still working on that, I guess. I still do some flying. I'd say 80% of my time is spent doing photography or podcast related stuff, right? But I'd say since COVID, I think COVID really, like it did with many people, really just put a complete spin on everything. What am I doing with my life? Is this something I really want to do? In terms of, I was full-time pilot, and then I'd say 80% piloting and 20% photography, and then I realized actually it's not what I want to do. I don't want to be. I want to have my own creative journey. I want to do my own thing. I want to be my own boss. I want to invest way more time in photography and art, because that's the only way I'm going to get better at it. So yeah, I'd say kind of 2021, 2022 to really like go all in on it.
I want to kind of shift back to flying real quick. So being a pilot, and we always hear this quote, flying is safer than driving. One, do you agree that flying is safer than driving? And if you do agree, is it because there are not other planes kind of running into you, and that's the reason why driving is not so safe?
It's a million times safer than driving. I mean, it does. I mean, that's probably not an actual statistic, but it's much safer than driving. I mean, statistically speaking, in terms of accidents and deaths, you just have to Google that and you'll see it. But I'll tell you why. Although I'll add a caveat into that. It depends which airline you fly with, because just like everything in life, there's budget stuff and then there's premium stuff, right? And everything in between.
Yeah.
You'll get a more qualified, experienced pilot. You'll get a better maintained aircraft. You'll get a better organizational structure and system if you go with your premium airlines. That's just a fact. If you go low cost, you're just taking a minute extra risk, but it is an extra risk. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, if you look at some of the most accidents in the world, they're generally human error, and they're generally because of cultural issues or because of the pilots, just not experienced enough. So, we have, when we get into the industry as pilots, we have a really difficult entry, because most airlines want experienced pilots, but if we don't have a job, we can't get experience to get those jobs. So it's, you have this really kind of dangerous window of new pilots getting in the industry and they don't have the experience. Now, you usually have someone sat next to you who's got way more experience than a newbie, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes economics can kind of rush people through the system, because airlines need pilots to sit as a captain when maybe they're not. Maybe in a different time, when they have a oversupply of pilots, they may not need to rush people through the system. So there's
there was
a lot
a time
of
where a lot of guys are coming straight out the Air Force.
Generally it does come down to the training. So if you think about driving a car, it's like you do some driving lessons, and most of the time, if you're not that crazy bad at driving, you're gonna pass your test, and then you kind of let loose, right? It's see what happens.
So Matt, which airlines are you telling me not to ever step foot on again?
Yeah, you can say those names. You ain't got to say celebrities. You can say these.
I travel a lot, and I take a lot of different airlines.
Yeah, okay. Well, Asia, you have to watch out. So, American airline, the airlines in America, even the low cost ones, you're good. You're well established out there, and the market's so good right now, and it's you've got nothing to worry about. But once you start going, same with Europe, once you start going into Asia, where they're kind of like 30, 40 years behind the rest of the world in the aviation industry, the education is not so good. And there's so many cultural battles, such as if if you have a captain and a first officer in a cockpit, you need to work together as a team, right? You've got two guys responsible for 200 people's lives. A lot of these Asian cultures, it's whatever the captain says goes. So the first officer is just there to basically just say yes. Even if the first officer, and this is, you can look at many accidents like this in Asia, when the first officer might spot something or might have an opinion, he either won't speak up, or if he does speak up, the captain will just say, no, you're a junior, stop, why are you speaking out of turn? There's a lot of these, think about Japan, Indonesia, China, Korea, all these countries, those cultural differences and those cultural battles exist. So in my experience, having flown with some of these airlines, but more importantly, met a lot of these pilots, I would stay clear of China Airlines, any airline in China. I would stay clear of some Indian low-cost airlines. I would stay clear of airlines like AirAsia, Asiana, just, the more low-cost Asian airlines. Stick with your legacy carriers like Malaysia Airlines, Singapore Airlines, Qantas, Garuda. Yeah.
You writing this down, Mickey?
Yeah. So when I flew to China and Japan, it was Qantas.
Cool.
And
you're fine.
Long flights, got to stand up, walk through, but like I could kind of see what he's saying. It kind of makes sense from a cultural standpoint. Like there's like a respect factor once you go to the eastern part of the world. Like you have to kind of like obey your superior as opposed to having dialogue. So I get that.
Which is fine in the military, because the whole military system is based on rank and hierarchy and orders.
Right.
But when you get it into the civilian world, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work at all. You still have to have hierarchies. If something goes wrong, you have to have the accountable person to make a decision.
Right.
But generally speaking, you're working as equals. You're working as team members. And what a lot of people don't know is that every flight, they rotate. Everyone rotates. So in terms of who flies the actual plane. So you might fly a flight where the first officer, relatively not inexperienced, but relatively compared to a captain, would be the one operating the aircraft, and the captain would be doing the radios, the checklists, paperwork, and just assisting, essentially. So that's common practice in the East, in the Far East, in a lot of Asian countries. The captain will always fly. It just doesn't breed safety. It just doesn't breed a safe environment. So yeah, try and stay clear of those ones.
I got a photography question. A real good friend of mine. He's just an amateur photographer. He's actually pretty good. He found a camera on the street in Harlem for like $5, some old camera, and he's been using it. And the texture of the pictures is very striking. Do you find the newer technology cameras that you use are I know it's digital and it's crispy clean and all that, but do you find some of the older ones that give you more character, or does that even matter anymore?
Oh yeah, great point. I mean, I have 3 film cameras because I just love it's kind of coming back into trend, the old analog photography, because it just has such a different, real nostalgic feel about it. And the process of taking film is much more difficult because you don't get to see the image when you take it, right? So you have to one of my cameras, it has a roll of film which you can have 12 shots on it. So if you take that out for the day, you've got 12 opportunities to get even maybe just one shot right. So your whole mindset changes. If you think about your iPhone and you go out for a day with friends and family, you're probably getting 20 photos on your phone, right? Just this, that, videos. If you think about film photography, it's just a completely different way of doing it. But yeah, aesthetically speaking, it has just such a different feel, and it's I love it. I don't do many commercial projects with it, but I always have it kind of in my bag and get other shots that wouldn't be kind of like the main shot. So it's more of a lifestyle thing for me, like a daily thing, to get some film stuff, because it's just awesome.
So speaking of like past and present, you said something earlier I want to touch on, and that is social media. And that in theory, right, everybody thinks they're a photographer at this point. And a couple different things there, right? I was reading an article the other day, and there was a number of videographers and photographers who basically, I think in a joking way, but also in a very serious way, were almost like, we need to bring back 16:9 format, right? Because everything has shifted back to this like vertical format and the 1x1s, and in some ways it's taking away the richness of the industry of taking a photo, of taking video, because of the different format, and because now everybody is thinking of it from a TikTok or from an Instagram perspective. Like, what's your take on that in terms of both the format and this? I mean, I guess technology has allowed us, in essence, to all think we're professional photographers.
How long have you got?
I think I opened up a can of worms, didn't I?
Yeah. Yeah. I teach this, it's part of like a lot of my, I guess, education side of photography. And it's not chasing the algorithm. It's otherwise, you're diluting every bit of artistic integrity that you might have inside of you. But I understand why as photographers, especially, we want our work to get out there. In order for our work to get out there and more eyes to see it, we have to kind of chase the algorithm a little bit, or chase the platform. And therefore we start to crop our photos to that, like you said, that 4:5 aspect ratio. I'm fortunate enough where I've got a big enough following, certainly on Instagram now, to be able to just do, I don't care. I just don't care. And I didn't even do that when I had 2,000 followers, right? It's like, I just don't care. I honestly believe that the cream does rise to the top, and the best really do come through in the end. But that's is easy to say and not so easy to do in practice. So I hate it. I hate Instagram for that. I hate the way Instagram has forced us into a short form video generation. I hate the way photographers get ostracized, where the true origin of Instagram was photography. So yeah, look, 16:9 is just normal. Like, go to the movies, watch TV. You don't watch it in 9:16, right? You don't watch it in 4:5. You watch it. Our eyes are trained to see in a more of a horizontal way. That is our field of vision. So yeah, unfortunately, Instagram would forced into that by the fact that phones are vertical and they want to capture more attention on the screen. So we have to learn as photographers to work with that, not necessarily work around it, but just work with it. And so there are techniques to do it if photographers really care about that. But that's why we have websites, and that's why we have YouTube. That's why we have even X and Twitter. I keep wanting to call it Twitter, but even X. As a photographer, you can have a good experience on X because you can post in high resolution and you can post horizontally, and people can twist their phone and they can see it, and people do. So there are ways to work with it. But yeah, I could spend hours talking about social media, the impact on photographers and the impact on society as a whole. But I think it's important, as whatever profession we're in, whether we're photographers, musicians, creators, accountants, lawyers, whatever it is, to use a platform of social media for a specific purpose, right? They're just tools. You're not going to sit on your deathbed and go, well, look at my amazing Instagram feed that I created over the span of 10 years. You're just not going to do that. As long as you can, understand the utility of these things, and especially for photographers where they have to. It's such a powerful tool to get their artwork in front of people. Use it as a tool. Don't use it as your gallery. Don't use it as your portfolio. Don't use it as the be all and end all of your existence, right? So yeah, I think it's fairly nuanced, but it's difficult to navigate around for sure. And I understand the difficulties people have.
All right. Enough. Let's get to the real stuff, B. Let's talk about models. All right. Here we go. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's do this.
Have you seen some of his models?
I'm trying to figure it out.
I can't wait to get into this now.
I want to hear from the horse's mouth, right?
Pause.
Hey, yo, right? Models, right? Like, what is your process with working with them? That's one. And two, what's some of the best experiences you've had shooting models?
How to work with models is something I haven't figured out yet. It's it's so difficult. It depends if they're professional models or they are just people off the street wanting their photos taken, or it's somewhere in between where it's kind of like a collab.
Mm-hmm.
It's different every time, and I've kind of talked about this a lot in my course, but there is no formula. But you have to learn how to be good with people. You have to learn how to have a conversation. You have to, even if you're an introvert, that can often work in your favor. You can have so many ways to kind of break the ice. You can prepare a lot. For example, you can do vetting calls, you can have introductory meetings and calls, and do a mood board and talk about styling, all of loads of stuff before you even get someone in the studio. But once they're in the studio, it's about making them feel two things: one, comfortable in the environment and around you, and two, trusting you. You just, it's very difficult to get a good photo without trust from whoever
Mm-hmm.
you're shooting. So yeah, look, if they're a good-looking woman, I have to have my wife there because I just want to, make sure that everything is above board. But I know guys that shoot nude women, right? And they shoot very exposed photos, and I don't know how they do it. They spend a couple of days kind of getting to know the person and making sure there is like an element of trust there. But I think that's a real skill. For me, if I bring them into my studio and we do a model shoot, it's just about having fun. As soon as they know that you're not taking things too seriously and you're not asking too much of them, and you spend probably the first 30 minutes like just getting to know each other, having a coffee, making sure their favorite music is on, making sure they know that they have a private area to change, making sure they just little things like knowing where the toilet is, and making sure we're going to have a break and this is the plan and this is what I want you to look like. When I actually get the camera out, they usually already quite relaxed, and then immediately we figure each other out in terms of shooting style and what we want to do in terms of setups and poses and all that kind of stuff. And by the end of it, they're almost taking over the shoot. They're
Right.
almost saying, "Hey, let's try this. I want to do this, and have you got time to do more of this?" So, yeah, it's a really good question. It's a really difficult one. I can't even remember your second question now, so you might have to
I mean,
repeat that.
favorite women that you shot. Like, I don't know if you know them by name and obviously, maybe Tom could do some research and throw it in so we can have something for the algorithm. You know what I'm saying? So yeah,
Yeah,
You and the algorithm.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, know all the models by name. I think that's obviously an important thing. And most photographers probably say, "Oh, my last shoot is, my favorite one," because, we usually you're only as good as your last shot, right?
right.
You always usually you're getting better each time over the course of however many years. So yeah, I shot a girl. She's kind of a friend of ours. We have like in Bali, I have like a cafe and then a studio on top, and we run these once a month. We run these kind of open sessions. So we have models who kind of put their hand up saying, "Look, I'll be your model for this session." So we don't have to pay them, but they get some cool images. And then we have 10 to 20 people come in and just, try things and shoot stuff with a model. And
Are you doing these for actual brands, clients, or
no, not these
what's that
ones. No,
relationship? Okay,
no, not these ones. They're just people in our community where
got
we
it.
live.
Stock
They're the
images.
best. Exactly, yeah. And just for me to practice and test new looks and stuff. So yeah, I put
Mm.
some on Instagram, I think last week, of kind of my recent shoot, which I loved them. Love some of the shots. Her name is Nadine. You might be able to see that on my page, but yeah, always as good as the last shot, I guess.
Nice.
Who's your hero photographer? Who's your guys you look up to?
Well, my main one is a guy called Joey L. Joey, I actually had him on the podcast in Brooklyn. We did a podcast in Brooklyn about a year ago, which was a real privilege. He's from Canada and he lives in Brooklyn, but he's been working with some of the biggest giants out there in terms of brands and individuals. He started a lot in studio photography and then worked his way into more kind of the type of photography I do now with travel and cultural portraits. So He's someone I've always looked up to for kind of like the last 10 years. A guy called Joey L. You can look him up. And then, you got some more kind of famous ones like Annie Leibovitz, Steve McCurry, Platon, people that have done some incredible and more importantly, meaningful portrait work and meaningful photography where, you can actually see they've made an impact in the world at some point. And then you have people, people that are not with us on this planet anymore, but that really kind of laid the foundation of photography that are most people's heroes like Henri Cartier-Bresson and Richard Avedon and people like that.
Cool.
What are some of the favorite brands that you have worked with or clients?
Oh, I mean, I don't do much. I've probably worked with a handful of brands. I don't really do much. I don't really like it. I don't really like doing someone else's shoot for them. But some of the big ones like Canon, who just have things sorted out. There's just such big organizations that their budgets are friendly and their organizational structure is great. And that's what you want as a photographer. You just kind of want to go into a job just having everything sorted out for you, right? Without having to kind of put a whole team together and be a director of photography as much as a photographer. So
see, I'm on the other side of that spectrum. I like being the guy who puts it all together.
Oh, really?
And his people and
I'm
brings it
lazy.
to life. Well, I mean, we do two different things, but to me, that's the creative side of it, right? Is to take their vision and to put it through my lens and to bring it to life with the people and pieces that I know are going to get them there, even if it's not how they thought they were going to get there.
If you can find a brand to work with that will allow you that creative freedom, a lot of brands that a lot of photographers work with, they're a little bit stifled in terms of the brief, right? So they go, okay,
I would agree. Yeah.
This is what we want. So there's always a limit. There's very rare that you get, well, in my experience, you get a brand that you just go, we love your stuff and your style so much. Just go and just
do your
here's
thing.
the money. Just go and do your thing. Like that's amazing because you just get paid to go and do what you want to do.
Matt, we're going to get there with you. Don't you worry.
Okay, cool.
Don't you worry.
Thanks.
All right. I want to ask you this now. You're a gadget guy. I'm assuming that's how you got into podcasting, right? That's how I got into it. I kind of started to love to use all these different pieces of equipment and then started to think about it. And I was like, this would be a cool way to bring all these great stories that I get to live every day to life and to get to meet people and to interview people that have a completely different perspective on life. But what was your journey into podcasting? And I want to learn a little bit. You've been doing this for a good amount of time now. You have a lot of episodes to your show.
I do well in the grand scheme of things. I don't. Right? You look at the kind of the bigger podcasts, and they're hundreds of episodes in, and we're 52 episodes in as of yesterday. And don't
undercut yourself. I mean,
no. I'm not.
Anybody who can get past, I think 10 is doing something because it's hard.
Yeah,
this isn't easy.
It is difficult. It's a full-time job if you're going to do it like properly, right? So yeah, look, no, it wasn't the equipment. Actually, the equipment annoys me because it's not. It's just audio is like the bane of my existence. It's so difficult to get the audio on point, and it took me 20 episodes to even like get close to where audio should have been. So yeah, I just learned by making so many mistakes. But no, it was the need for conversation. I felt, I really started reaching out to other photographers in COVID because, a lot of us were under lockdown, and I was wanting to kind of connect with the photography community out there. And I found it difficult even before COVID. I found it difficult. I'm not a photography club guy. Like I'm not that kind of geek that likes to go and like just, jizz over their equipment with each other. I'm more of a guy that wants to sit and just have a deeper, meaningful conversation about whether it's about photography or not. And I found that photographers didn't really want to do that. There was like they didn't want to share any secrets. They didn't want to go and edit together or go and shoot together because it's like, well, no, that's my image. I don't want you to kind of copy me or, it was a very kind of protected IP in that respect. So, I just didn't like that. And I just wanted to talk to people, and then kind of add in the fact that social media and people being glued to their phones all the time meant that discourse was more rare, or meaningful discourse was more rare. We're all glued to short form content. So people were creating stuff where it's like, I need to get attention. I need to get hooks. I need to just like bang, 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 bang all the time. Doom scrolling. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Can we just kind of connect with each other again? Can we like just talk to each other and maintain some kind of focus for more than 2 minutes? Right. And so I started doing Instagram lives. And really, again, it was a selfish endeavor. It was like, I want to learn from others, just like you. I want to like talk to other photographers who've done more than me in the space, and I want to learn. I want to give me some free advice, basically.
Yeah.
And then those Instagram lives were shit because it was Instagram live. And but I would get some feedback, and people said, oh, you're quite good at it. I enjoyed the conversation. And I was only doing like 15-20 minute conversations at this point. And then when I moved to Bali, an opportunity opened up where I wanted a studio. I wanted a photography studio where I could do photo shoots. And at the same time, I managed to figure out a way to just turn it into a podcast studio as well. And it's like, well, what better opportunity would there be to kind of set up a proper podcast? And as soon as I got into 4 or 5 episodes of sitting down across the table from other budding photographers or other artists that were in Bali at the time, I loved it. I was hooked. I'd come away from it having this weird high of connecting with another human, where there was nothing else. Like there was nothing else. Phones away, no one else in the room, just one-on-one eye contact. Not in a weird way, but just like a one-on-one conversation with another human that we just, even including me, we just don't do anymore. How many times you go to a restaurant and you see people having dinner and they're on a date, and at some point in that dinner they're
on the
bringing out
phone.
their phones, right?
They're on their phone.
I mean, it is a way of life at the moment, but that was kind of a big reason why I wanted to start the podcast. And the only kind of topic I knew to talk about at the time was photography. So it definitely started as more of an interview type learning conversation. I wanted to learn from other people. Now it's a little bit more of a conversational, episode based podcast, I guess.
It's very good. I'm hooked.
Well, thank you.
Now I haven't listened to them all yet. I'm getting through them. But let me ask you this. Who's number one? Who's been, if you can say, who's been that guest though that really made you think and that you walked away thinking, wow, like you really pulled something from that was special?
Now, this is not a cop out, but I do pull something from every episode. I come away going, I took something out of that, right? But I did one recent, Joey L in Brooklyn. It wasn't in my own studio, which is a shame. One day I maybe get him in my own studio, but the one I did with Joey L in Brooklyn, because he was kind of my hero in the photography space, I was just like this, the whole episode, like just tell me more, right? But I think one of the recent ones I did with a photographer called Platon, that was an online episode, and we talked for about an hour and a half, and he has so much to say and so many like insightful points about photography, yes, but more storytelling and impactful and inspirational visual arts in society, and how we can, certainly as photographers or as filmmakers or other types of artists, can really like make a significant and positive impact within the wider society, or more of a micro economy and micro society with people in your inner circle, or if you become more successful and become a little bit more public, then people outside of that as well. So that was really a conversation I came away from going, holy shit, I know nothing. I in a good way, in a good form of kind of naivety, and like I have so much space to grow as a storyteller and as a way to give back. It's such a privileged position for me to be able to like take people's photos and get paid for it. Now it's time to do more meaningful projects and to give back somehow. I haven't figured that out yet, but it was certainly a kind of a conversation which made me think more about that kind of thing, for sure.
Yeah.
What prompted the move to Bali? And how was it living there? Obviously, it's a totally different culture, totally different part of the world. Like, what brought that about?
Yeah, it was essentially COVID. We were living in Hong Kong at the time, so my pilot job took us to Hong Kong, me and my wife to Hong Kong back in 2013, and we had lived there for just under 10 years. And when COVID hit, COVID really was quite a struggle in Hong Kong, because although we didn't have any significant lockdowns, to travel out and back into Hong Kong, you'd have to quarantine in a hotel for 3 weeks. You without leaving the room,
I remember them talking
right?
about
And
that.
that was going for 2 years. You know, they were one of the last countries in the world to kind of relax those restrictions. And
So you had to sit in a
as
hotel room for 3 weeks when you got back.
got back from the US, it's 3 weeks. From other countries, it was 2 weeks. There was nothing less than 2 weeks. So depending on where in the world you're coming from, you get tested every day. If you got tested positive, you basically go into essentially a medical prison where you're on, which happened to me. And you go into this ward and you stay in there for however many weeks it takes you to test negative twice within the space of 24 hours. It was very draconian, very autocratic way of dealing. And it come from the mainland, right? So China were kind of imposing their will on Hong Kong at the time. Yeah. So me and my wife, like, fuck this. Like, I can't live, even if they relax the restrictions tomorrow, this is not a place I want to live where this type of thing can happen. Yeah. So Indonesia was a country that was second certainly on my list to try and, see what it'd be like living in, because it's such a diverse country, so huge and so diverse. And as a photographer, it's a mecca. It's just endless places, endless subcultures to take photos. So Bali was an obvious choice. We got married there 6 years ago. We'd been a couple of times on holiday, because from Hong Kong, it was only like a 4.5 hour flight.
Okay.
So we kind of knew it, but we knew enough about it to know that we'd really like to go and try living there. And there wasn't really anywhere else that would be conducive to our lifestyle that we wanted to live in at the time. So yeah, and that was, we haven't really looked back since. We kind of love it there.
That's dope.
Wow. Well, Matt, I feel like we could talk to you for hours. I want to know. I want to know so much more. But let me ask you this on the podcast thing. I'm going to ask you two questions. One, lessons learned. Like, what have you learned? Teach us a little something. We're all in this podcast game. I love it I think you articulated it. I couldn't have said it better. I love having conversations with people I would have probably never in a million years bump into on the street or have the ability to talk to. And number two, and I'll give you time to think about this. If you could have anyone on that podcast, anyone, who would it be?
You guys, obviously.
Good answer. Good answer.
This guy's media trained. He knows what to do,
man. These are great questions. I love them. And before I continue, like, I can't believe we're 50 minutes in. It's been so nice to talk to you guys. I love this format. Obviously, once you guys reached out to me, I looked at some of your episodes and love the way you guys just banter with each other and roll off, and your timing is great. And it's a different format you guys do for podcasts, and I love it. So please keep it up. I'm one of your new fans, so it's been great to be on here. But to answer your question, tips, know about audio like is way more important than video.
Agreed.
Without audio, you can't, in my opinion, you just can't gain a successful podcast. People would get bored of shit audio, right? People would, it's just another barrier for people to continue listening to your podcast. So number one, before you even start an episode, speak to someone who knows about audio. You can only learn so much through YouTube, I think, but get an audio technician, set it up with them. You don't have to spend a fortune on your equipment. You can get great audio with an iPhone. You just got to know what you're doing. Unfortunately, I learned the hard way with that. And then two other things I've definitely learned along the way, and it's kind of the art of hosting, right? And you guys you've done it really well in this episode as well. Just give, kind of the same thing, I guess, but learn how to listen and give space to the guest to just talk and continue talking, right? Yep. Know when to come in. So many podcasts out there you see, like, interrupting or making it about themselves. And although it can be a two-way conversation, and some people like those types of podcasts, I'm kind of somewhere in between that and the interview type podcast. I just can't stand interview type podcasts where it's just like, okay, here's a question, answer, on to the next question, answer. So I think there's a really nice kind of middle ground. But in order to do that, you've got to kind of know how to listen, right? And know when to jump in. So on top of that, I would say do your research, right? I think, to really have a good conversation that isn't the same every time, you're asking the same. And I did this for the first probably 20 episodes. I had a rough structure of kind of questions I would ask photographers every time. And it was people that pulled me up on that. It's like, just stop asking the same questions. But I thought the same questions would apply to all photographers, but they don't, and it gets boring. So do some deep dive research, and there's no excuse these days with the content you can see on people, right? You can find everyone has a digital presence. So have a really good plan in your mind as to what direction you want the conversation to go. And that just takes practice as well, right?
And I know you got to just end it with this. The perfect person that you want on your show. Like not just us. Okay. The person. I mean, hey, anytime you want us on, we're there. We'll fly to Bali. You in?
I'm down.
Do it.
Yeah.
Just not on the Asian airline.
I'm there.
No Asian airline. And then afterwards, I'm going to drop you off at some remote island for a shooting of Naked and Afraid.
I'm with that. What is with the Naked and
Afraid? I keep bringing it back to that.
Yo, he's crazy. Mickey's wild with it.
The one guy I dream of getting on podcast is a guy that has nothing to do with photography, but he was the man that got me into listening to podcasts. And it's Sam Harris. Now, Sam Harris is a controversial figure. I've listened to him and read probably almost all of his books. I've listened to him for, I guess, 10 years or however long he's been doing podcasts. And he is someone who I just want to meet and like trying to get into his brain for hours. He's such this philosophical academic who has so much to say about everything and knows so much about everything. And I'd love to just sit and listen to him, but maybe that wouldn't make a great podcast. But yeah, he's kind of one of my heroes in the podcasting space. I think his podcast, he's never kind of been tempted with the video type of podcast. He's just been audio through and through, and his production quality is great. His structure is amazing. His topics are generally really interesting and thought-provoking, and that's all I'm looking for in a podcast and even in a book or any type of content is how are you going to provoke my thought for that day? How are you going to make me think differently about something? So there are so many people out there that can do that, and so many people in the podcast space that just run amazing podcasts and really help people out there. And for me, Sam Harris is one of them. So he's kind of the OG in my mind when it comes to kind of the scientific, boring type of podcasts. So I'd love to have him on the show one day.
And there's an interesting debate in we talk about this a lot, that idea of audio versus video, right? Because in some ways, people want to see what the people that are talking, but in other ways, right? The medium is used in my mind when you're doing other things, right? That's how it's grown. You're running, you're working, you're cleaning, you're whatever. And I also think there's a mystery sometimes to hearing just audio, because in your own mind, you're kind of putting together what that person's looking like, what they're thinking about. And I don't know, I go back and forth. Like I think we put it out as both, but we're honestly thinking about, is audio the way to go? Because you can have a lot more intrigue and you can do some things that you can't do when you're doing both.
How about this?
So it is an interesting debate.
I agree. I've been thinking about it a lot. All of my analytics favor the audio.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
So many more downloads, so many more listens than a YouTube video. YouTube's not built for podcasts. People don't go onto YouTube to search for podcasts, right?
No, not at all.
My only thought to that is what I'm thinking about, and maybe one of us can try it first, see what happens. But is to go all in on the audio, but to offer the video as a separate, maybe a behind a paywall, right? If you want to see the video of this, you pay a couple of bucks, right? And then you get the video as well. Because at the moment, the numbers, I go through all this effort, just like you guys, because there's so much effort to produce a high quality video. And sometimes it just falls on deaf ears or blind eyes.
Nobody's watching it. Yeah.
Nobody's watching it. But I think because I'm a photographer, like the visual aspects are so important. I think as a photography podcast, I want that visual option to be there. But I feel your pain, man, and I'm thinking about it a lot as well. Yeah.
Well, Matt, thank you. Thank you for getting back to me. A crazy guy who reached out because he just loved your photography. And we got to connect. I mean, that's what makes this kind of thing very special. So tell people where they can find you. Tell people the name of the podcast again. I want people to be able to find Matt Jacob.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I mean, thanks for reaching out as well. It's been, I love those types of organic connections. It's wonderful. So keep doing what you're doing. You can find me on my website, mattjacobphotography.com. Everything is on there. My Instagram links, the podcast links as well. The podcast is called The Mood Podcast. You can find that on all the normal podcast platforms and on YouTube. Just type in The Mood Podcast. You'll find it on YouTube as well. So everything else is on my website.
All right.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it,
guys.
man. I might call you back
Absolute
offline
pleasure.
and hear more orgy stories.
I can tell you all the details if it's offline.
Exactly. Names and everything.
I'll put that
here we go.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate
Thanks so
it.
much. All right,
Thank you.
care.
All right, folks. That's our show. Tune in to Unglossy, Decoding Brand and Culture on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And follow us on Instagram at UnglossyPod to join the conversation. Until next time, I'm Tom Frank.
I'm Jeffrey Sledge.
Smicky! That was good.